It comes and goes. We're out here chasing a feeling.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Feels Out Loud, brought to you by Becoming Together Therapy and Wellness. This is your host, Tara Martini, along with the host, Becky McNattin. We're glad to have you listening as we live and share stories of mental health.
Hi, all. We are addressing an important topic today, and it's relationship endings. Now, last week, Tara, we highlighted relationship beginnings.
We did. The other end
The other
of
side
the
of the spectrum.
timeline.
And we've discussed the life of a couple several different times on the show, talking about communication and conflict, even how to navigate when challenges come up. But today we're taking on a very emotionally wrought phase when the relationship is over. And there are all sorts of things to consider when ending a relationship. And so we wanted to have someone skilled in the arena of relationships to participate in our discussion. Joining us for all the things today is marriage and family therapist Andy Garbers. Welcome, Andy.
Hello.
Welcome.
It's great to be here.
Thank you for thank you for being here today. Want to tell us about you?
Me. Okay. Well, I grew up in Wisconsin. I grew up in a small rural community, and both my parents were divorced before they met and had me. So they've talked about that a little bit. I have some half siblings from those relationships. Lived in Wisconsin, first kid ever in my entire family system to go to college.
Wow.
And then obviously the first to go to do a grad program. And then did that in Wisconsin, then moved to Minnesota and did life in Minnesota, eventually got partnered and married, and then moved to Chicago. And then Chicago didn't feel like home. And so we moved back to Minnesota and partnered with a really great person named Sarah. She's got her PhD in ethics from Chicago. That's why we went there. And lived down there for a while. She now works at the Westminster Town Hall Forum doing social justice and bringing in folks to talk about a lot of really hard things, but good things. And then 4 years ago, we had some fertility issues. And then 4 years ago, we were able to get pregnant, and we have a little human named Josie. And she's got me wrapped around her finger for sure, which I did not expect, but it's been really great.
What a blessing.
Yeah. Well, we have listeners out there who may be pondering their own relationships right now, knowing that we're talking about relationship endings. So they might be thinking about an ending coming up. Maybe an ending just happened. What would you say to them
About the relationship ending?
If they're pondering it.
What they're pondering.
I would say that we still know the stats don't lie, that 50% of people who end up married end up divorced. And that's kind of across the board still the case. I would say that there's a lot of things that can be contributing to that. There's a lot of things to be thinking about around ending a relationship. It's never, ever easy. It's all 100% of the time, universally a very challenging, hard thing for folks to navigate, because there's so much that's involved, whether you are actually married or if you're partnered, if it's been 6 months or if it's been 60 years, right?
Yeah.
Like endings are tough. And so I think having community, having people, having resources to be able to process, not doing it alone is really important. And I just want to say, if you're facing that, you're not alone. There's many folks out there facing that. And if it feels hard, it's because it is. It's a really hard thing to go through.
Yeah. Well said. Is there a way to uncouple the right way?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I will say it's very challenging, given the folks that I've worked with, the people that I know in my life, probably the folks that you all know, and everyone who's listening. That's more of a rare thing to happen because there's a multitude of factors that play into that.
Yeah.
But I do believe that there's a couple different ways to uncouple well. But that also comes with its challenges too.
Well, we're going to get into it all today on what
Such an
is
interesting topic.
the right way to uncouple, knowing that this is an emotional experience. Such an interesting topic here. Right now, we're going to take a short commercial break, but stay tuned as we talk through discerning and navigating relationship endings. Thank you for listening to Feels Out Loud. We will be back in just a moment.
You gotta find your people, then you'll find yourself. Express yourself.
Welcome back to Feels Out Loud, brought to you by Becoming Together Therapy and Wellness. I am Tara Martini, along with Becky McNattin. Let's dive right back into our discussion on healthy relationship endings.
I have so many questions.
So
today. So many questions. I want to know, Andy, how often do you find people wanting to process relationship uncoupling in therapy?
I would say of my couples that I see, which is about 30 to 40% of the folks that I see,
Okay.
100% of them. Every couple that I see, one of the questions I always ask is ending the relationship on the table for you? And of those 30 to 40%, probably 90% of them say yes.
Okay.
If things don't change, then something has to change.
Okay.
Because most couples don't come into couples therapy just wanting to talk about how great things are.
But what a
Right.
terrifying question.
Yeah.
Like, for someone
Yeah.
to then verbalize for the first time, like,
Yeah.
yes, that's an
Yeah, and it
option.
helps give a picture for how prevalent this is.
Mhm.
How
Mhm.
often people are pondering, thinking through, is this relationship something that I want to continue to be in?
Yeah.
It's common. So when
Yeah.
you said in the last segment, you're not alone in it. Yes, this happens a lot.
Mhm.
What would you say are some things someone should consider if they're thinking through ending a relationship?
There's a whole host of factors. I guess everyone's got their own unique story, right? And
Mhm.
so I think there's a matter of the biggest one that I experienced why people stay together or worry about uncoupling is kids.
Yes.
If they have
For sure.
children, there's so many things. You want to make it as painless as possible for the kids.
Mhm.
And my my comment to that is, would you rather have your kids be in a 100% conflict and fighting and anger and high emotion stage 100% of the time? Or if you separate and you uncouple well, now your kids are in good environments 100% of the time, just with you two apart.
Mhm.
Just because a lot of people, you probably hear it said, like, we're staying together because of the kids.
Mhm.
I think that's a myth. I think that maybe that works. I have a few couples who have chosen to stay together, live in the same house, even though they're divorced or separated,
Mm.
because they don't want to be away from their kids, which I completely understand. I get that. And as long as they can do that well so that the kids aren't impacted, I think, I mean, again, you have to decide that
Mhm.
if you can do that with your partner. I think finances are a huge piece. If you own a house together, and especially given the market today, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, there's that. If you have to divide a lot of things, if location matters, how ingrained are you with each other's families? I think jobs, do you rely on the other person's income? Things like that are all a huge part of the decision to stay together or not.
Yeah.
Well, and I think for people who are listening who have never heard of the concept uncoupling, for people like me who have gone through the divorce process, I had never heard of this term until I became a therapist. Boy, do I wish I would have heard of this, because you're right. Getting a divorce, no matter how peaceful it is extremely difficult.
Mhm.
A time in which having support would be lovely to have it. So just to know that we're talking about such an important topic that people may for the first time hear, like, wait,
Right.
there's marriage therapy, whether it's through a priest or a pastor or with a therapist. We hear about that all the time, preparing you for marriage, but we don't hear enough of there is therapy and there is support for when you are choosing to end a relationship, whether it be a partnership or a marriage.
Mhm.
Right.
And so I hope this provides people with a little light and hope that, like, we don't have to do this on our own.
Mhm.
Correct. My little plug for couples is, regardless of what stage you're in, is you're absolutely right, Tara, that everyone here, well, a lot of people hear of premarital therapy.
Mhm.
Great, that's awesome. I'm full support of that. Like,
Mhm.
talk about the things that are going to change for you.
Mhm.
Now you can also
Right.
you can end a relationship well, just like you're
Mhm.
trying to begin a relationship well. And I am a huge advocate for any life change, whether that's if you lose a job, if you are trying to have kids, if you have a second, third, fourth kid. Every new like phase of life or change brings a different dynamic that if you can talk about it ahead of time and somewhat prepare, not that you can get every idea out there that's going to happen, but being on the front end of it so that you can prepare for it is going to help you immensely. It all comes back to communication and talking to each other.
Yes,
Sure.
which we talk on the show often about.
Me too.
But it preps the muscle of having the hard conversations before they maybe are hard, but helping ourselves realize that those things might come up.
Right. So what if, we've talked about this where we've already talked about scenarios where both people want this ending, but what about if the other person has ended the relationship, but we didn't want that? Are there things we can do to process our experience?
Yes. I mean, I'm a little biased, but I would say go to therapy, right? Because it's going to then be a really lonely feeling.
And do you recommend, because I'm sure people are wondering this who are listening right now, do you recommend that person individually go to their own therapist?
Yes.
Or the uncoupling therapist?
Yes. If you can, right? And I get not everyone can. I think if you can go to a couples or uncoupling therapist to learn how to process this, to learn, I think a big piece is the why. That's a big question, right? Is like, why is this happening? What's going on? Some folks try to work really hard to try to save it, even though the other person has said, I'm done. I think an individual therapist can help immensely to say, like, to help them understand it doesn't feel like you have any control in this. And so what do you have control of, and what's the narrative in your head versus what's the reality, and just trying to make sense of both of those. But then a couples therapist, marriage therapist, whoever can help probably try to mediate a little bit in the middle to try to help gain some understanding, to gain some insight, as well as because I'm guessing that those conversations, my guess is based on what I've heard from folks, is it's not as easy to talk about it, just the two of them, without a third party there. And so the third party can ask different questions. They can offer different insight and just gauge the person who wants to end the relationship in a different way than the person. When you're in it, you have a different lens.
Totally. It makes, you said in the last segment, it makes me think about this, that it is possible to uncouple peacefully and with respect. But why do you think it's so hard to do that?
Well, if it's a heterosexual couple, toxic masculinity is a big one. It's ego, it's pride, it's I don't want to be told what I am or who I am. I don't want to. I think a lot of it's honestly, most of what I experience is folks who have some of that like inner child or that younger part of themselves that feels rejected, that feels abandoned, and I don't want to feel that. So I'm going to act out in a way that isn't maybe authentic or true to myself, because it's so buried deep inside that now it comes out because it's tapping something that hasn't been healed or dealt with.
Well, and also there's a reason they got there. And a lot of it, when you get to the end, when I've worked with couples or just one of the people at the end, is there's so much resentment, right? And it's really hard to get past that. So they're both bringing in a bag full of resentment and sitting there and sorting through that, right, in order to get to a peaceful ending is a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah, it makes me think about as well, endings are grief. And
so much grief in this.
You're getting people who are both in grief responses and would be responding to the moment from a lens of grief, which is highly emotional and isn't necessarily predictable on how we feel. So all of that would definitely be at play and make this hard to show up as our sequencing, thinking, even intentional self. We are showing up with emotion.
Well, and the trauma attached to it, right? So if are they in fight mode, flight mode, freeze mode? Well, if you think of them reacting 2 different ways so differently, how hard that would be then to communicate in an effective way,
right?
In a peaceful way.
So Catherine Woodward Thomas, who you probably know lots about, Andy,
they're buddies,
created the concept of conscious uncoupling. I want to hear your thoughts about this quote. So I'm going to tell our listeners this quote. A conscious uncoupling is a breakup or divorce that is characterized by a tremendous amount of goodwill, generosity, and respect, where those separating strive to do minimal damage to themselves to each other and to their children if they have any, as well as intentionally seeking to create new agreements and structures designed to set everyone up to win, flourish, and thrive moving forward in life. What do you think about that quote?
Whoa.
I think it's excellent. I'm glad you mentioned that person because Catherine, because she's the one who actually created it, and then Gwyneth Paltrow made it popular in 2014 on Goop and all this stuff, and then that got a lot of pushback for whatever reasons, right? But Catherine's the one who kind of created it and came up with the idea because she was having her own experience with the ending of a relationship, and I think it's amazing. I think most people, capital THINK, think they are doing that in ending a relationship. But
good point.
I don't know that it's actually true. And while I think that Catherine's idea behind it is excellent, the amount of people willing and able to do that truly is lower than we want it to be. Because it's gonna take good stewardship from each. I think respect and honoring the other person for who they are and where they're at is going to be needed on both ends. And I think often that comes from one side, not both sides. And so if both parties aren't participating in that, it's going to be very hard to do. But ideally, that would be how all relationships end.
Well, when I read it, it's like, this is utopia.
I literally, that word came in and I was like, what utopian world is this person living in? Like, that would be lovely if that's how every breakup or divorce went.
But I could see where if people in the relationship are committed to ending with intention, and as you said, perhaps bringing in support or resources to offer and help guide that process, the difference that makes to ourselves, to our grief process, to honoring what the relationship was, all sorts of things.
I feel like this quote goes against like our societal norms, right? Because what do we see on TV and in the movies are the dramatic breakups, right? And they put one person as the evil person and one person as the victim, in that. My goodness, if we could reframe it and have this be the goal and the norm, it would be lovely. But I think, this isn't how we're taught.
Are there steps to conscious uncoupling?
There are. I don't have them memorized. I have them here in front of me.
Yeah, perfect.
There are, and I think the critique that Catherine gets is this: that this is great on paper. Can people actually do it? I think if people come in early, like say they know the relationship is potentially on the brink, right? And we're worried: can this work or not? You can start some of this stuff early on to work. I think starting on ramp into conscious uncoupling so that you can do it well. If you both realize like this just isn't going to work, and you give people kind of a runway, even for the one who doesn't want that, who's got one foot out, they might be willing to do it easier. The person who's all in on the relationship is like, I don't push back to it. They might be able to buy into this, like, I can't save the relationship anymore, so how can we at least do this well? And Catherine's got the 5 steps. Do you want me to go over them?
Yeah, that'd be great.
The first step is finding emotional freedom, where essentially she talks about finding healing and letting go a lot of the resentment piece, starting that process, letting go of the emotions related to the other person and to the idea, and like that ambiguous loss, that like grieving what I planned for my life,
what I had hoped for, what I wrote.
Yep. And so letting go of some of those emotions of what my future was supposed to be and saying this is what it is.
Yeah.
And which is hard to do. That's a huge step in and of itself. And this is all, by the way, in her book. You can buy the book. It's like one of the only books around this topic. And so it's pretty easy to find.
Wow.
And then the second step is reclaiming your power in life. The way that they kind of word it in the book is, for a lot of folks, it feels like it's happening to you. So trying to let go of that, like I'm the victim, I'm the result of this thing, and taking responsibility for the role that you've played in this relationship and what has happened around you, and being able to, rather than saying like, I never wish this, it wasn't my idea, to say, okay, this is happening now that I'm removed from the emotional side of it. What can I do? What can I control? And what steps can I do to take forward? The third step is break the pattern, heal your heart, which is, this is kind of where therapy can come in. deal with some maybe exploring some childhood wounds, attachment wounds. I'm an attachment therapist, so I work with everyone around this and just healing. Which side note, we often find in partners what we grew up with. So you might often hear, I married my dad, I married my mom. More on the, if you're anxiously attached, you found whatever your mom or dad was, that because it feels familiar, not because that's what you want, because it's what you know.
Yeah.
And there's no shame and no harm in that. It just, once we are more aware of that, we can see the patterns in others and pump the brakes sooner if it doesn't feel good, because we know this feeling, we know we don't like this feeling. But that's kind of this. It's breaking the pattern and learning to repair your heart a little bit. The fourth step is become a love alchemist, is how she puts it. Turning resentment into wisdom, establishing new boundaries, and letting go of some of the old vows to create new ones. And then the fifth one is create your happily even after life, which is recommitting to yourself, establishing new agreements, creating new goals and trajectories for yourself, and making them realistic, attainable, and creating a positive future.
Wow. I mean, I'm pondering all of those things. The reframing resentment is super interesting. I can see where that would require putting ego aside, and looking at ourselves. What a gift that can be in thinking about what does this mean for relationships in the future, boundaries that I may set. I love how she says happily even after, that there is this idea of peace, contentment post a relationship ending. When so often, I get why she uses that, because so often in our culture we use happily ever after, that it just goes on and we're all great and it's in a bow and life works out. And when it doesn't, that doesn't mean the opposite of unhappiness and dismal or awful.
I also liked the vow part about looking at the original vows and then, committing new ones.
New ones, yes. A person named Andrew Horn, in an article from 2024, came up with what he calls the ABCs of conscious uncoupling. Would love your thoughts on them, because I thought they were really interesting. I'm just going to say the A, B, and the C. A is in his view appreciation, B is boundaries, and C is clearing resentment. And I had several thoughts on these, but I wanted your thoughts on the three of them, Andy.
Well, I'm really curious to know what your thoughts are. To me, I guess this feels like a different version of Catherine's work, right? I did not. You had introduced me to this idea. I looked it up. I thought more about it. I'm like, this is excellent. This is I love it. It's simple. It's easy to remember. I'm a huge boundary person. Some folks in my family call me the Great Wall of Boundaries. Probably to a fault a little bit. Okay. But I think being able to do that, again, the only concern or issue I have with this requires folks on both sides to do this.
Yes.
Right.
And that's where I think we mostly get stuck, is if we can have appreciation for the other person, if we can set our boundaries and clear the resentment, which is huge. As Tara pointed out earlier, I'm all for it.
Yeah. Well, part of what I loved about the ABCs was this idea that sometimes in linear fashion, we get stuck on steps that, I'm done with step 1 and now I'm on to step 3, and people can get upset with themselves that I feel like I'm back in step 1. When I don't think that that's necessarily what conscious uncoupling means, that there's just 5 attributes of it. But I liked how this ABCs, that these are just 3 components that are integral and vital to ending a relationship with respect. And this idea of appreciation, where we could share, even holding at the same time paradoxically our resentment or anger or bitterness, but sharing with someone what we appreciate about them, how they have impacted us, what we've learned. And not from, I learned how to not be an awful human.
Right. Don't bring your pettiness into it.
But where we could get to that place, I actually wish people could do that in all relationships, how that would help us hold or respond to our resentment and bitterness of how we've been treated. This idea that boundaries are so required in stating needs and being explicit about this. communication, if it's space, as you mentioned, people may have an ongoing relationship post the ending of a relationship. They may have children, they may have finances that they share. They may still interact with friends or mutual friends or family. So how they're going to navigate those and being able to say those explicitly and openly. And I don't totally know how one clears resentment. I was kind of,
Let us know.
but I was
if you figure it
pondering
out.
that, but like, if that would be a part of the process of what does it look like to even allow ourselves to experience it. Did you have thoughts about it, Tara?
Well, I did, and I feel like we ask this question anytime someone comes in, whether they're introducing a theory or modality to us. And so I have to ask you the same question, that when I'm looking at conscious uncoupling and then looking at the ABCs, it sounds beautiful and the steps we've learned so far. And you say it's very challenging. Is there an example or type of couple where this just doesn't work?
Where conscious uncoupling or ABCs doesn't work?
Correct.
Well, I think as I had stated earlier, if both parties aren't open to it,
Right.
it won't work.
Okay.
Right. I think at its simplest form, and Becky, you had mentioned this earlier too, I think if people could be in relationship and respect one another, when I work with couples, I have kind of like three things that are really important to make a relationship work well. And one of them is respect. And if you can't respect the other person, regardless of if you don't like what they're doing or whatnot, but if you can't mutually respect one another, then I don't see how this can work.
So my thought when I'm looking through this is like, wow, this would be, I feel like, very challenging for a couple who's experienced infidelity.
Yep.
Because of the everything you've said, right? Mutual respect and whatever, where there'd be so much to process before you can get to the steps of.
Yeah. And when I've worked with couples in infidelity or trying to come through that and stay in the relationship, I mean, that takes a long time. And so I think if there has been infidelity and they're trying to make the relationship continue to work for whatever reasons, they still love each other, whatever, and they've gone, I don't know, it's arbitrary time, a year or year and a half in therapy trying to make it work and it doesn't. I think enough time and maybe some healing has happened to understand the why. I'm a big Esther Perel fan. She does a lot of work around infidelity, and understanding where and why that happened doesn't make it okay, but understanding there's usually a reason for infidelity, for an example. And the understanding the why or where this came out of doesn't heal the relationship necessarily. It kind of helps explain some stuff. I think if you go through some of that process, this could work. But if it's done right after, or if there's, like, you just discover this thing happened and you're just done.
Right.
I mean, you've lost all respect. You don't, there's no trust, which is another, you don't want to communicate because anything the person says, you're not going to believe.
Sure.
And so I think, infidelity is probably one of the biggest contraindications, if you will.
Yeah.
Well, and part of what you bring up really beautifully is people may be doing their own individual work alongside conscious uncoupling. They may be processing their own hurts, wounds in order to show up with a space of recognizing the other person's humanity. You mentioned respect, and that makes me think about, in our line of work, we talk a lot about something called nonviolent communication. I don't know if our listeners even know what that is, but therapists talk about nonviolent communication frequently, and I would guess it shows up a lot in this particular kind of work. Can you tell us more about how this would happen or show up in conscious uncoupling? What does nonviolent communication look like? And why is it helpful when we decide to end relationships?
Well, I'm a big fan of nonviolent communication in all capacity.
Yeah, right. Just in general in life. Yes.
Just the name itself, right? But I think because without us knowing, subconsciously, we get tapped, we get triggered from trauma, we get, going back to the previous question as well, I think if there's trauma in the family or the dynamic, whether it's It could be anything, but if trauma is involved, infidelity, I mean, trauma is a big word, right? So anything that disrupts the norm will be really hard to just say, okay, I respect you. Let's end this well.
For sure.
Our own stuff is going to get tripped, and whether we can stay in it and with the other person, even if that person feels like they're against us, I think our own stuff gets tripped, and our fight or flight or fawn or freeze, but in this case, fight or flight comes, and I use the window of tolerance model a lot. And when we go into our hyperarousal state, I think that's where you see a lot of the violent communication, right? And that communication is also a big word. I always ask couples to define. Everyone comes in and says, we need to work on communication. Okay, give me 5 points of what that means to you.
Yeah.
Because it could mean anything, right? But communication is done, yes, verbally, non-verbally, physically, all those things. And if you have any form of violent communication, the other person may go right into freeze stage, fawn stage, shut down, because of who knows what their background is bringing into the mix. And so I think I set a rule in my office: nobody, if you yell, we're done. Because yelling, I don't think solves anything ever in any relationship. Yelling at yourself or yelling at others, it shuts other people down. And so any form of violent communication, there's a lot of examples of it, but I think having nonviolent communication can allow the other person to actually listen. It allows you to be more thoughtful and honest about what you're saying.
Yeah.
It allows you to share your feelings, to feel the feelings of the other, to offer empathy, to offer caringness and kindness. Whereas when any form of, and I think anyone would have to define what that looks like, but for me, the default is anytime you raise your voice or yell, we're moving into dangerous grounds here. And like, we need to have an equal playing field, whether that's, how far do our bodies need to be apart from each other, how high, what's the tone in the room, what's the affect, what's the body language saying. I think setting those grounds and that groundwork helps have much better communication and conversation with one another.
That makes total sense. So nonviolent communication really brings into the scope of what is communication, all of these facets. It probably could include offensive language, blaming, othering sorts of things. I would imagine that all of that could show up and put the other person into what you mentioned is that hyperarousal place.
Well, yeah, it's that perceived threat.
Or hypoarousal on the other side.
And if anybody's done couples work and they're familiar with the Gottman model, that's where you get into the 4 horsemen, where there's contempt, there's criticism, right? Try to stay away from those. Then there's stonewalling, where you kind of shut down, and there's defensiveness. All of those, nonviolent communication is another way to talk about the attack defend cycle. When you feel attacked, you're going to defend yourself, and that's when people get defensive and they respond in ways that aren't really authentic. But you defend yourself because you feel attacked, and then you usually defend yourself by reattacking, and now we're in this loop that really goes nowhere.
Right. And maybe aren't even talking anymore about the thing that you had intended to talk about.
99% of the time.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I have some concepts I wanted to run past you and have you describe these for folks, as well as tell us how we could maybe operationalize them. So the first one is differentiate needs from entitlements. And we talk about this in therapy with individuals too, but this idea of just because you might need it doesn't mean the person is ready to offer it. So, just tell us your thoughts about differentiate needs from entitlements.
I think you just did. I mean, we all have what we believe to be our own needs. Are they really needs or they wants? And I think what, Becky, you might need, I might not see as a need. So I think I think the why is really important. Expressing why this is a need for the other person. I guess when I think of needs versus entitlements, I think of more the other person receiving it. If they're not coming with a generous mind and they're like, your relationship is already on the rocks, they're going to see you as entitled to that thing. And so I think if it truly is a need, being able to express the why behind it, and again, it's really up to the person who's listening to see it as that need or that they see it as an entitlement. only you can decide if it's actually a need or entitlement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the ABCs of conscious uncoupling would say holding boundaries without blame. What do you think about that?
Could you say more? What?
Well, I would surmise highlighting what it is that we need or are looking for when we're creating new agreements, because this is post-relationship ending. What am I, as I'm reframing what boundaries look like, maybe even reframing resentment, what does it mean to do that without blaming the other person for maybe even why we're there?
Mm-hmm. I mean, a way to do that is, I go back to the Gottman. I love I statements. So when you're naming a boundary,
They do go powerfully.
They are, yeah.
Yes.
Because it's hard to argue with somebody when they talk about how they are feeling. Not you make me feel, but I feel this way. I have this boundary because this is why it's important to me. Not I have this boundary because you always do this.
Well, because then there's the blame.
There's the blame.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm blaming you. You are the problem. That's why I have to set this boundary. No, I set a boundary for myself to keep myself safe. So keeping the safety, I think, peace in mind helps you set the boundary because this is what you need to do for you, not because of anybody else.
Yeah.
Yep.
That makes so much sense to me. The last concept was this idea of separation as ritual, not just a process. And I was so struck by reading about this recently that we honor beginnings all the time in our culture. Weddings, showers, housewarmings, things in the life of a relationship. But endings are silent.
They are.
And how can we acknowledge endings meaningfully instead of with avoidance? I can imagine that's so isolating and grief-stricken for people. So just what would you say about separation as ritual?
Sure. I'd be curious, Tara, I don't know fully, well, I don't know much of it, but like, as your relationship ended, the comments that you got from people, right? So when things end, a lot of times people are like, oh, I'm so sorry. What if this was really good for me? Like, we make up a lot of assumptions. And so if we can do separation as a ritual, and I try to do this in my couples work, I tell them, my job is not to keep you together. My job is to help you figure out what you want. Some of the work I do is discernment work, where people are in the process of deciding, do we want to stay together or not? And in that in itself is a ritual of a process, because it's a stepped process. But I think the separation of a relationship, I think to your point, Becky, is that on the front end, it's celebrated, it's amazing, it's great. I think we have to take a minute, ask people the why, sit with them, listen to what is going on for them, and realize that separation can be a really good thing, and to not just have it be done and then move on with our life. Because I think a lot of times when something ends, it's looked at as shameful or bad.
Yeah.
Right. And so to be able to, it's really up to the person. Nobody can tell you how to process an ending of a relationship. You have to decide how much you want to share and who you want to share that with. But the more honest you can be about it and saying, like, I'm doing this for myself, or even the real vulnerable of, yeah, I wasn't showing up well in the relationship for this person, and I get why they had to leave. But you have to know yourself and be comfortable with yourself really well to not go into an ego place, a shame spiral, to be able to be honest with yourself and to say that I didn't want this to end this way, whichever side of the ending you're on. But I get it. Like, I get that this is the process that we needed to go through. And I am creating new rhythms, new pathways forward, a ritual in itself of how I'm making this be okay, even if it wasn't what you wanted. Like, you get to decide how you do that going forward. And there may be some bumps because the other person may not be as willing to want to end a relationship.
Yeah.
But that's where boundaries come in, and you get to decide who's going to be invited into that, what road, what pathways you want to take into that.
Yeah.
And I think mostly that is done with other people.
Well, that makes so much sense to me. And it, of course, I think us in this room have bias that pain is owed space, and there can be ritual around pain. Writing letters to ourselves, talking with ourselves, these things about the endings are filled with the emotion and the grief around that. The pain gets space just like happiness and joy does too.
There's something sacred about it.
There's something sacred about that. So much to think about here. We're headed to another commercial break, but when we come back, we're going to talk through questions from you, all our listeners. Feels Out Loud will process your thoughts in just a moment.
Find your people, then you'll find yourself. You gotta find your people. Express yourself.
We are back again with Feels Out Loud, and this part of the show is where we talk through questions from you all, our listeners. If you have a question related to mental wellness, sharing feelings, or topics for each week that you would like us to process through, please visit our website at becomingtogethermn.com and find the Feels Out Loud page to submit a question directly, or email us at contact@becomingtogethermn.com. Of course, follow us on social media as well. We really do want to hear from you and what you are wondering about.
And Tara, we've had some people who are pondering uncoupling.
Yes.
And relational endings. So to all of you who are pondering that or thinking through it, we're right there with you. We had a listener who asked us a pretty deep question. How can I manage my feelings of resentment and huge anger to foster a peaceful ending? I have no clue how to do this. Andy, I want you to start. What would you say to this person?
I would say, first, give you credit for being honest and voicing this.
Well said.
It's not easy. None of this is easy. It's not supposed to be easy. It's not what anyone wants. And so I believe that one of the few ways to really get through resentment is forgiveness. And before everyone's like, nope, I can't do it. I'm never going to forgive this person. I think forgiveness has gotten a bad rap of what it's supposed to be. And I don't know. I'm in this world all the time, right? So I'm constantly thinking of it. And the more I talk about it with clients, they are really kind of confused by my view of forgiveness, where it's entirely about you. It has nothing to do with the other person. It's not forgive and forget. It's not condoning. It is purely about you, so you can move on with your life. And so finding ways, and it's not going to be overnight. That is a process and a journey to get to a place where you can forgive the other person. They don't even have to know you forgave them.
Right.
Most of the time they won't, because they don't deserve it, honestly. But I would say that having spaces, obviously therapy is one of those, having supportive community, if you have people in your life that you can process this with, even if it's one or two, because you're not going to want to talk to 25 people about this stuff. It's heavy. It costs a lot of energy, and you need space away from it sometimes too. I think that's another one, is giving yourself space away from this sometimes, giving yourself permission to not think about it all the time. And even to say, you know what, I'm going to schedule this. I'm going to schedule from 6 to 7 tonight to be angry, to be resentful, and to be upset. And then I'm going to try to, keep it externalized and set it on a shelf and enjoy this TV show. Because tomorrow morning I'm going to wake up and it's going to be there, and I'm going to give myself permission tomorrow to do it. So it's a lot of mindfulness, maybe some meditation, finding ways. The other thing I would say, but I'm curious to hear from you all too, is it's going to bring up a lot of energy, and that energy has to go somewhere. So finding ways to burn that energy.
Good point.
So getting outside, especially now that the weather's nice. I also love when it's cold, because that quick temperature shift helps regulate your body and your nervous system. But burning that energy, if it's working out, if it's doing 25 jumping jacks as fast as you can in your house just to get it out.
Acknowledge the resentment and acknowledge the anger.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say, listener, maybe ask yourself, it's just going to be one quick statement from me. What did we create together that was good? In addition to resentment gets to have its place. What else was there? And that doesn't mean we're negating the resentment or anger. It means that you might also challenge yourself in order to hold or foster the peaceful ending. What did you create that was good?
And what I would add to it is just, I think sometimes when we're in that situation, it's that idea of, you can still acknowledge, yes, what they did was bad, and you don't have to be angry. I think sometimes if you think, if I get rid of the anger, then I'm saying it's okay what the person did.
Yeah.
If I forgive, then I'm saying it's okay what the person did. Oh my goodness, no, it doesn't.
No.
It's okay to sit in peace and still know what they did was wrong.
We're at the end of our show already for today. Thank you for listening, everyone, this morning. Join us next week as we explore the idea of weaponized gratitude. And in the week ahead, be kind to yourself. Remember, everyone, connection fosters wellness, and your voice is one the world around you needs to hear. Share yourselves, friends.
Just a little, just a little, just a little. Put my heart in the middle, in the middle, in the middle.